Have you ever really stopped to wonder how a massive government agency actually works? Well, it turns out our whole understanding of that has been completely flipped on its head over the years. We've gone from seeing government as a simple machine to viewing it as a complex, almost living system. So today we're going to explore that evolution, looking through the different lenses that have shown us what's really happening inside public administration.
I mean, it's a huge question, isn't it? Think about something like the Department of Motor Vehicles, or the National Park Service, or even a public health agency. How do they actually get things done day to day? What makes them tick? What is it that really drives the decisions and the actions inside those walls?
Well, the wild thing is, the answer to that question has changed dramatically over the last century or so. There isn't one single theory that explains it all. A much better way to think about it is as a series of lenses. You know, like different pairs of glasses. Each one you put on reveals a totally different part of the picture and helps us focus on what makes these organizations work or not work.
All right, so let's rewind. The very first lens people used, well, it basically viewed government as a machine. The goal was super simple: build the most efficient machine you possibly could. This was the age of industrialization, right? So it just made sense to them to apply that factory logic directly to government.
This machine thinking led to two big models. You had the classical approach, which was all about the blueprint, the formal structure, the hierarchy, the rules. Then you had the scientific approach, which was more about the factory floor itself, analyzing every task to find the one best way to do it for maximum output. But here's the key thing. Notice what they both have in common. They both believed that politics and the actual work of administration had to be kept in two completely separate boxes.
But there was a massive problem with this whole machine idea. It had some huge blind spots. It basically treated people like interchangeable cogs, and it completely ignored the human element. You know, office friendships, rivalries, what actually motivates someone to do a good job. So these theories, they looked fantastic on paper, but they just didn't hold up in the real world. And that big, solid wall between politics and administration, yeah, that started to crumble pretty fast.
Realizing that the machine model was broken forced a huge shift in thinking. Scholars started to look past the official organizational chart and began to focus on the people themselves. And this wasn't just some small adjustment, it was a total revolution in how we thought about this stuff.
This idea, captured here by thinkers like Chester Barnard, was absolutely groundbreaking. Think about it. An organization isn't just a structure, it's a social system. It's all about people working together, communicating, making decisions. It sounds so simple now, but that statement completely changed the game.
And this wasn't an overnight thing, you know? You can see the idea building over a couple of decades. It kind of starts in the 1930s with the human relations movement, which was a direct pushback against those cold, mechanical models. Then Barnard comes along in '38 and really lays the groundwork. But the real explosion? That happened after World War II, when Herbert Simon's work kicked off what we now call the behavioral revolution.
So what is the behavioral approach? Well, in a nutshell, it's about shifting the focus from how an organization should work according to the rulebook to how its people actually behave in the real world. It's about watching what people do, observing their real actions and interactions to figure out what's truly going on.
And this shift in focus opened up a whole new universe of questions. All of a sudden, researchers weren't just looking at the formal hierarchy. They were digging into the juicy stuff. How do leaders really lead? How does information actually flow through an office? What gets people excited about their work? And what about the power of those informal cliques and friendships that the old models completely ignored? But the story doesn't stop there. So first we looked at the structure, the machine. Then we looked at the people inside of it. The final lens required us to zoom out even further, to look at the entire world outside the organization.
And this brings us to the ecological approach. The main idea here is that a public agency is not some sealed-off box. It's much more like a living thing in an ecosystem, right? It's constantly interacting with and being shaped by its environment. The political climate, the economy, social values, the culture it's operating in. You simply cannot understand the agency without understanding the world around it.
A key thinker here was a guy named Fred Riggs. He argued that you can't just copy-paste a government system from, say, the United States to another country and expect it to work. He saw societies on a spectrum. On one end, you have fused societies where one single structure might do everything. On the total opposite end are refracted societies like the US, where you have a different, specialized structure for every single job. And in the middle are prismatic societies, where things are all mixed together. The big takeaway here? Context is everything.
So we've gone from a machine to a social system to a full-blown ecosystem.
Okay, but why does this journey through all these theories actually matter today? Well, because it gives us a much richer toolkit for understanding and, hopefully, improving the public services we all rely on.
You can really boil this whole journey down into 3 big steps. We started with the blueprint, just the formal structure. Then, we opened the door and started looking at the people and their behaviors. And finally, we looked out the window to understand how the entire outside world shapes everything that happens inside. Each step adds another crucial layer to the picture.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you. The next time you have to interact with a government agency, your local school, the post office, whatever it is, try putting on these different lenses. Do you see a machine, just following its programming? Or do you see a social system with its own unique culture? Or an ecosystem responding to outside pressures? Maybe it's a little bit of all 3. Thinking about it that way really